I'm Vidya from Thepsi, and welcome to the 30th edition of Humans of VIT of the newsletter The Weekly Edge. And today we have with us Kumar Dvij from batch of 2020 and Shubham, a third year student in VIT. And today's topic is secularism in Indian context. So, Shubham, in the recent past, the country has witnessed polarization on a religious basis at its epitome, with when leaders are talking openly about their religious propaganda to gain votes. And by a considerable population, they state that secularism is a hoax. What do you think is the future of secularism in our country?
See, first off, you mentioned two major things here. One was like the politicians using religion as a tool to gain votes, and the basis on which we are divided, that is religion. The people in which we are, the people who are divided is in religion. So yes, that is, religion is a basic tool when you come to Indian politics. I think religion plays a major role rather than development and rather than any other basic things that most politicians talk about roti, kapda, and makan. But I think they should also talk about the religion. And not, this is in a sarcastic way, not in a really way. They should talk. The first thing they mention is religion. And see, I think we could not, uh, push the blame on the politicians itself. Who are the politicians? हम ही लोग के बीच में से आ रहे हैं. So they see the difference between us. They use it as a tool to gain votes. And this is, I think this has been since 1947, since India got its independence. And post independence, we have seen not only on the basis of religion but also on the basis of caste, you can say, because you can see in Bihar elections, like if you see AMIM, the party from Hyderabad, which is basically a Muslim League party. So they had no actual groundwork in Bihar, but even they managed to win 5 seats in Muslim populated areas. Same with if you go and see in UP, it is divided in Yadav votes, it is divided in Brahman votes, it is divided in upper caste votes, lower caste votes. So I think religion being used as a tool by the politicians is not solely dependent on the politicians. Yeah, we can say that they are the representative of us, but again, from where do they come? It's we who choose them. So if we are letting them use our religion bias to pick up a criminal or to pick up someone whom we know is not worthy enough to lead, but just because oh, hum Pandey hai, wo Pandey hai, so if I will vote him. So I think even I am equally responsible as the politician is. Secondly, secularism is a hoax. See, this is a bit controversial thing, because to say secularism is a hoax, I don't think it is a hoax. But some people have made it a hoax, and it's not only the leaders, but it's also the people. But yeah, leaders, again, they have the power. They can play with mind. So I think there some people also debate on the thing that how, in fact, even I think the way secularism was added in our constitution was not the correct way to be added. But again, if something is being added for a good cause, then I don't think it's something we should be afraid to use or afraid to accept.
If you're given an option to choose between the Western concept of secularism and the Indian essence of secularism, then which one would you choose? Because Western concept of secularism curtails the rights of the citizens first, and if religion hinders in the functioning of the state, they would definitely curtail the rights of the citizens. But in India, they believe in maintaining a positive relationship between state and religion, and there's no clear distinction. So, if you're
Yes.
given a choice, which one would you choose?
See, one of the things that I can think of from your Western concept of secularism is maybe most of the European Union banning the burqa. Right? They give the explanation that it is very difficult to identify through uh, without the face being seen, since there's a wheel on top of the face. It's very difficult for identity. Um, Also, people have taken undue advantage of this. I mean, terrorists have worn a burqa and committed mass crimes. Um, to be fair, everything has loopholes. Anything and everything has loopholes. In India, you look at secularism, where, as you said, the state and religion don't really have a clear distinction. So parties call themselves the flag bearer of one religion. Here, actually, political parties are based on religion. You will not find it mostly anywhere in the world that political parties come up on the basis of religion, upholding the religion. And I mean, yes, religion does matter a lot to people. People do really care about their religion, and I don't think so. Anyone should have a problem with that, because after all, it's the faith. I mean, today's people, we would not care about someone's sexuality. Why do we care about someone's religion? So it's very difficult. I don't really have a inclination towards the Western concept of secularism or the Indian concept. But again, you can argue that the Western concept is very barbaric on the minorities because they are not allowed to freely practice their religion. And maybe you can also argue that the Indian context gives them liberties which the majority doesn't get. In India, as you know, that there's no universal civil code. We have a different, even different marriage acts as well for different religions. So again, that is also a thing which I don't agree with. And I mean, if one person is allowed, if it's illegal for one person, why is it legal for someone else? So that's a big thing we need to address about the uniform civil code. And let's see how our country moves forward, because unless we stop judging and stop making laws on the basis of religion, we won't move forward.
I completely agree with that. But if I'm given an option, I would kind of compile both the concepts, like make a positive relationship between state and religion, but if it hinders, then take an action on it. That I would follow that way, actually.
I see. I find very practical challenges with that, because again, as I said, religion and politics are can't go without each other. They are mutually very intertwined.
Yeah. And I mean, the concept of secularism and religion is not only used by the politicians, but it's even used by the media for gaining TRPs. It's
Yes.
very, very visible in case like rape cases, to be honest, and sexual harassment cases like Asifaz, Nikita Tomar, and many more. And a very, very common thing amongst all these cases were the religious bias. And
Yes.
many gruesome instances of rape, murder, eve teasing were never addressed by any media, national media or any sort of media. So, what are your views on that?
See, first of all, I think that media reporting in India is not regulated at all. I, as far as I know, I think the regulatory board has been set up by the news channels and the newspapers themselves. So that doesn't really stand a chance, because since you are regulating yourself, that doesn't really make sense. Um Again, what I would like is consistent journalism. And I mean, yeah, I think so that everyone would want that, but that's not in the best interest of the media, that you have consistent journalism. Because if one headline reads that so and so, you know committed rape, without mentioning the religion, the other headline should also do that. But that doesn't happen. Be it there are umpteen number of examples on either side, that one at one place, and every time you see the every time such a incident happens in our country, there's a huge hue and cry about it, and quite rightly so. But you see people, I mean, even common people defending it, saying, pointing out the differences between the reporting of the incident. And I mean, yes, there are differences, because there is no consistent reporting. And And as you said, that media is a very powerful factor in the common person's life. Uh, Mostly people read the newspaper while after they get up during their morning ablutions. Then all of us, you know, subscribe to some news channel or the other, which I don't agree with, because I think news has gone for a toss here in India. And I mean, even on social media, you all you find. I mean, Twitter is just another news broadcasting agency. There's no constructive debate or no constructive talk happening anywhere. I mean, Twitter is one main thing for it, but even you look at, I mean, social media is a very good platform for activism, but not debates. You cannot have debates on social media because you have too many people, just throwing out their opinions without having any information regarding what the topic is, and really not knowing when to shut up. Many people need to be told that, because before social media, I think the wise people in the society used to shut up the stupid people. By the way, I read this on social media only, that the wise people used to shut up the stupid people. And you know um, I mean, yes, everyone should have a voice and all, but if your voice is very discriminatory to someone, you might as well not have a voice.
I completely agree with the state of journalism in the national media right now. And well, do you think, like you said, like many the rapes are politicized, and many gruesome crimes like these are politicized, and they're even propagated by Indian media for TRP. So, do you think the concept of love jihad is a hunger for TRP, or is hunger for votes?
See, uh, love jihad is a very, I think it's a very controversial, and it's also a very contradictory, not contradictory, I'm sorry, it's a very controversial, and it's a bit, um, it's something to be thought of and then said. But again, I think the amendment, the audience which is passed in the UP Sabha, in the UP state board, they passed on audience, and all of the media houses, all even the BJP leaders who have passed it are calling it an audience, calling the audience as love jihad law. In fact, if you read the audience, there is not even once mentioned the word love jihad. The audience title is I'm not forgetting the title. It's something regulations to stop forced conversion, something 2020. And even if you read the three amendments on the three audiences which are given in the law, it has nothing. It has to do with forced religious conversions, but not exactly love jihad. But coming to the proper proper thing, why this term has been propagated, or why this term has been used, I think love jihad is like is a problem. I think it is a problem, and it needs to be addressed. We cannot say just to be just to be in good terms, or to be sound good, or to be sound very what I say, intellectual. We cannot continue to ignore this. So I think love jihad is a problem, but the amount at which it is reverberated, that politicians using it as a tool, is wrong. It's a problem, it is addressed, and people are taking correct measures against it. So I think that will do. Calling it love jihad, they should actually call that audience by its name, so people know it is against the forceful conversions after marriage. It's as simple as that. Even if a Hindu guy marries a Christian woman, and if he is forcing her to convert her to Hinduism and accept Hinduism by force, even he will be behind the bars. It's not only for like against the Muslims or against some particular community. So I think that law is good, and the term love jihad should be lesser used.
Thank you so much for your time, and it was a wonderful session with you. And if you like this discussion, do check out our next edition, which is about religious extravaganza, which will be coming out tomorrow. And if you would like to feature in our next video, please comment below or send us a DM. Thank you.
Thank you.